Welcome to Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast. It's your girl, Erica. Episode 11. 11. Underneath my belt. My fake belt because I don't wear real pants. Only wear leggings. I have not brushed my teeth. You guys, I'm gonna be real with you. Today's Wednesday. This Wednesday. I have not showered. Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Friday. Ew. No regrets. So I'm gonna need help just being, like a decent functioning adult. So if you could just send help, that would be great. Okay, but my guest today is Lon Bartel. This is why this dude is someone to know. Okay, he works for a company called Virtra, and the reason that Virtra brought him in is because he has all of the specialties, okay? Specifically, the thing that I was interested in is that he is a use of force expert and also a firearms expert witness. So when we chatted, we met each other went to the Mellow Mushroom, and we had some pizza and some beers, and we talked about all the things. We talked about Virtra and how that whole simulator works. We talked about the pros and cons of phone footage. We talked about how your brain assumes and creates information, super wild stuff. And then, we talk about those emotional triggers because, I just love it. Just want to talk about feelings. So I'm very, very excited. You're going to learn a ton from him. What I want this podcast to be for is creating dialogue. When you're done listening to the episode, I want you to have something new to think about, something new to explore, some curiosity. Okay, so I'm excited about what we talk about for you. Leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. We do have a really cool series that's also coming out. Not Lon and I, but we are gonna work on something. I am working with Professor Josh Bowling out of Visalia, California, which is around the Fresno-ish area. So he's actually been a police officer for like 18 years, and he teaches an arrest and control class. He teaches how to do post-OIS, officer-involved shooting interviews. And it's a post class, and a lot of like the CISM and peer support programs are modeled after what they put together at his police department. So he's a really cool dude, and he reached out, wanted to put together a little mini series of moves that could be helpful to police officers. There is a growing number of individuals who are learning how to do MMA moves, wrestling moves, and unfortunately police departments still aren't funding a lot of that stuff. So instead of just being like, well, they're not gonna pay for it, we're helping you invest in yourself. There's these videos, and then I found some cool business partners that have like given me cash to give to you. So if you participate in the virtual, I sound drunk. If you participate in the jiu-jitsu, then you also get entered into win. I have 5 total that I'm giving away. Businesses are sponsoring 5 officers, giving them 1 month of jiu-jitsu classes. So you get the money and you can do whatever you want with it. Not whatever. You're gonna fucking go to jiu-jitsu, duh. So anyways, really, really pumped about that. So tune into the internets on Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is Arizona time right now. Okay. All right, let's get into this freaking episode. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, I forgot to say, subscribe to the channel. I keep forgetting. Could you do that? Boop. Push that little button. All right, guys, let's do it. Lon Bartel, Virtra.
Okay. You guys, I'm very excited because there's a gentleman that's sitting across the table from me.
You're gonna tell them where we're at?
We're in the Mellow Mushroom. We're in, where are we at? Desert Ridge. We're in Phoenix.
Yeah.
We're in Phoenix. We're in the Mellow Mushroom. We're in a back room. So you guys are going to hear some 70s weird tunes in the background. Don't get too distracted by it. I'm very, very excited though because I actually reached out to, so Lon and I, so we met a hot minute ago.
Well, we've actually met multiple times. Because of some of the other stuff that you do at some of the conferences, I've run into you frequently, actually. And I ran into you in California was it Cato?
Cato, yeah, San Diego, yeah, because that one and what's the other one? Urban Shield. Those were the only two that I did in California.
Yeah, we were at Cato, and we were doing a presentation there, and you had a booth set up, and I'm like, I know her.
That's right.
And then I see it at ATOA. Let's see, SHOT Show.
I've never gone to SHOT Show because it was always really, really expensive,
Yeah,
and we
crazy
couldn't get
expensive.
into like the selling room, and it's like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and well, you were at NTOA too, though.
Yeah, I've done NTOA for like years. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've run into you multiple times.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, so my knife, the one that I had, I lost a screw out of it, and you gave me a package with like 7 billion screws and a little hex key, so I could replace the one that I lost.
See, you guys, do you see how outstanding I am? I'm hospitable. I'll hook you up.
This is true.
Okay, so Lon and I met. He works for Vertra. That's one of his jobs. He has many things that he does, but he works for Vertra as a training consultant and.
Well, actually, I'm the director of training and curriculum.
Okay.
For Vertra.
What does that mean?
So my team is responsible for the creation of all the visual aspects and simulation, but also all the training curriculum that goes along with it. So the lesson plans, the PowerPoints. We have what's called a VICTA program, Virtual Interactive Coursework Training Academy. So when you get our sim, you don't just have a big machine with video.
I didn't know that.
I actually hand you a lesson plan and PowerPoints and pre-tests, post-tests, evaluation rubrics, so that when you as a trainer go to run it, you have an entire methodology in front of you to maximize what's in the sim. So like the one piece that we just finished that I'm super stoked about was the autism piece that we just did. So I partnered up with SARC, Southwest Autism Research Center, and we created this entire training curriculum on autism. So you step into the sim, and the president of SARC talks about autism. We deal with it. We start showing examples. So we do inside simulation, life-size, actual signs and symptoms of people that are on the autism spectrum. And then we do these mini scenarios. So not full-blown scenarios, but these mini scenarios where you may have to interact with somebody who is on the spectrum and they're exhibiting some type of behavior. Yeah. And if you do the right thing, it moves to the next stage. If you do the wrong thing, we educate you and go, hey, look, what you saw was a type of stimulation or self-stimming, right? Remember when we talked about it earlier, blah, 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 blah. This is what that means. You might have to give this person an opportunity to run through that stim behavior because it's a self-soothing behavior to let them adjust and deal with the environment that they're in. So if you get it right, you move forward. If you don't, you have to go back until you do get it right and you understand the concepts. And then it moves on to the next stage, the next stage, the next stage. And then at the very end, there's an actual full-blown scenario. And for people that don't know, so Vertra makes super high-end digital video simulators. If you think about like flight sim, if you think about any type of medical simulation where we create a simulated training event, or simulated event training is another term you'll hear, where we have actors on screen and high-end special effects that you have to interact with verbally, as well as we use all the tools of the trade for law enforcement and the military. So pepper spray, taser, handgun, rifle, stun bag.
I didn't know that you did all those. I've only ever done it with a handgun.
Yeah, no, we do the full meal deal. I've got a full auto, 249 set up for the military. That
meant nothing to me. Everyone else is like, yeah.
It's a big machine gun is really what it is. So yeah, we do all of that. We do everything from that to for some of our military clients. We do mortar systems. We do grenade launchers.
What's a mortar system?
So you've seen them in the movies where you get this tube that connects to the ground.
Oh, and they just fucking like shove something in it?
You drop the grenade in it, it propels, and then it...
Have you shot one of those?
In simulation, sure.
Oh my God.
In real life, no. I've been around a lot of explosives. I haven't been around one of those.
That would be so much fun.
Yeah, so we do a lot of different stuff. We leverage what we get out of the military for law enforcement. We leverage what we get out of law enforcement for the military, because there are some overlaps that you see. It's not completely an overlap, but there are some areas that overlap. A lot of our military folks, as the adjustments in how we deal with things, started borrowing from law enforcement in how to deal with situations, right? Reading people, understanding body language, physical cues. So you started to see, especially with some of our peacekeeping missions, we needed to borrow from some of our law enforcement aspects. And our SWAT teams, they do borrow from the military when it comes to certain things.
Were you in the military?
No.
Okay, so you were strictly law enforcement.
Yep.
Okay, so VirTra so I got introduced to VirTra at an FBI National Academy conference training, whatever it was. It was in St. Louis. It was probably like 5 years ago. I don't even remember. I wish that I fucking knew the person that was there that I hugged. I want to find that person. So I went into the simulation going like, okay, I've been working for police for a couple years now, and my interactions have been really good, really welcoming. There's so much camaraderie and family and community. And then when a lot of the shootings with black males and officers were being like splattered all over the news and just really being like highlighted, that's when I really started developing some stronger feelings and going like, that doesn't really mix with my experience though, as far as like what people were saying about officers in the news versus what I knew. So I remember going into the VirTra thing, and I have all of my little feelings and my beliefs and whatever, and it starts off with you in like a patrol car type of scenario. So is it 360 degrees?
Well, we have a 300 degree, a 180, and a single screen.
I think I had the 180. Okay, so
three screens in front
yes,
of it.
Yeah. So I had 180 degrees of like this screen that it's basically like virtual reality because it's fucking huge. So it just takes over your senses. So I'm listening to dispatch, and I'm speeding, so I'm having all of those feelings, and then I arrive on scene and I'm supposed to yell out these commands. One, I'm not a fucking police officer, so like I don't know commands. So I'm just saying whatever dumb shit pops in my head. And then everything happens really, really fast, and all of a sudden I end up like shooting like 3 times. I get shot, and then I have no idea what happened. And I walked out of the simulator and I just like burst into tears. Like just cried because everything that I had thought I knew based off of the news and whatever camera that it was filmed on came to like this screeching halt when experience showed me that none of that matters, or that none of that, not that it doesn't matter, but that it's just not a natural part of the process or part of the experience. So that really set me on like this mission to like find out what else I'm missing. Okay. And that's what created TacMobility, was listening to people and asking questions. So I reached out to VirTra a couple days ago wanting to create some kind of event where we're monitoring officers and their heart rate. We're monitoring their heart rate. You guys, we're getting pizza too. So like it's a whole fucking mood right now. Yeah. Oh my God. We just ordered this. It's honey ham and pineapple and jalapenos. Oh my God. Thank you, beautiful women. You're amazing.
Can I get you anything else?
No, I'm good. Thanks. Okay, so I reach out to them and I want to hook officers up to this device, and I want to see what's happening on a physiological level, because a lot of officers a lot of you guys are like, it's not a big deal. I'm used to being stressed out. It's not like a blip in your day to experience call after call after call, right? And so, but I think that in missing what's happening underneath the surface is what builds and builds and builds and leads to this mental breakdown and just like, right? Am I right?
Yeah,
Talk to me about that.
You and I talked a little bit earlier. I've been doing some work with Dr. Robbie Tapia, who
I was trying to remember the name.
Yes. So there's a thing called EDMR.
EMDR.
I'm sorry, EMDR. She'll kill me if she heard me flub that one.
I fucking got you.
And it's an eye movement desensitization retraining, right? So
what does that mean
what we're
for
really,
people who don't know?
It's
a big...
Yeah, it's a big way to say that we have a way that we know we can go in and actually heal the micro injuries in the brain. You know, and
micro injuries. Explain that for people who don't know. So, back.
Let's go to the full story. So there's a lot of parallels between the human brain and the physical body. Right, the brain we're a carbon-based life form. End of story. I mean, full stop. We're a carbon-based life form, meaning that majority of us is connected or are all built together with carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. There's some ammonia groups in there, some other stuff, but for the most part, it's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. That's what we're predominantly built with. There's some lipids, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the limitations on that chemical concept of the body are also placed on the brain. And the easiest way for me to explain it to most people is relating it to working out. So if I put this huge, tremendous load on the body and I overtrain you, I can hurt you. I can injure you.
Right.
Mentally, if I get exposed to something that is so overwhelming, it can hurt that person. It can damage them. But I can also overtrain, right? If I don't give enough rest to the body, if I don't have enough recovery time, if I don't give it food, if I don't give it, like we said, the rest component, I've got to do all of those things too. And if I'm not doing all of that, the body will get injured, but the brain can get injured as well if I don't take care of it. And a lot of times what happens with officers is think of the mind and we're as an analogy, and we're picking up a barbell. Mm-hmm. Well, when you work out, you eventually put the barbell down. Problem is, psychologically, a lot of times we just don't put the barbell down.
You don't know that you're carrying it.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
You're carrying this extra weight, and you don't know that you're carrying it, and it adds. And then all of a sudden, I'm having to pick up another barbell, and another one, and another one. And then maybe they're only 3 pounds at a time, but they add up. And that's where we deal with the PTSI. And you'll hear me say PTSI as opposed to PTSD. If you go in,
he called me out on this when we were on the phone. He's like, well, I would just really discourage.
If you go to the DSM, right? So
DSM, he also uses these big ass words.
So there's a manual that psychologists use that establish how you would categorize.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
That is the manual. I think they're in version 5 of it. That says these are all these things, and currently it's still called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but it really, if you look at it, it's an injury, post-traumatic stress injury. And I think from a linguistic programming concept, if you have a disorder, oh my God, I have a disorder, I just accept it. But if you have an injury, you can recover from an injury.
And it's something that happened. Like, this is one of the things that I say in the program is like, trauma is, there's a doctor, Nicole Lbartel. She's really, really fantastic. And she talks about how trauma is this event that we carry. It's not who we are. And because because we have learned things that come from it, we can also unlearn and integrate those experiences into our lives.
I remember.
He even asked, he's like, do you want to wait till later? I'm like, no.
No, she's going to make me eat.
We're going to just do everything together. So it's better to look at it as something that's happened versus something that's just like...
Yeah, I mean, when people see it as a disorder, I have a disorder. No. You have an injury. Recover from it.
Just like you hurt your back when you were working. Like you have an injury.
Yeah, recover. Recover from it. And, just the way you look at it makes a difference on whether you're going to overcome it or not. It really does. If you think, as the saying goes, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. If you think you can overcome it, you can. But sometimes you need some help. And that's where, like Dr. Tapia and some of the other folks that are out there, they've developed some tools. And whereas the brain deals with rest and recovery, the body deals with rest and recovery, the brain a lot of times deals with consolidation, which is how our memories are formed. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have to make new associations. If I establish an association, I need to find a new association.
Like as in, okay, example. So I'm currently working on getting over my ex-husband and just those relationships, and every time they pop into my head, I immediately I like role play, and I fucking time travel. I get all the memories.
I've been here before. I know what this is.
Totally. And I play this whole scenario out in my brain. I feel all the experiences. So association, do you mean I begin to give myself other things to think about when those things pop up?
Well, instead of the stimulus being a statement, a behavior, a word, an event, a dog, a smell, that association of those things, we start to associate them with different things. We have to sometimes break the association. If we don't, every time that happens, it becomes a trigger.
That's the exposure.
Yeah, and that trigger, and then whether you're there or not, it's just, I think I am. Most people have seen the movies, where it was called not Combat Shop.
Combat Shop. That sounds like 0% of the movies I would ever sign up for.
No, well, what we're saying, we've seen it represented where shell shock. There it is, where a veteran will hear a firecracker and freak out, right?
Okay.
Because there's an association. There's a strong association with, an IED went off, half of my platoon ended up dying, and now I'm hearing, explosions again. So that brain's tightly associated with that loud noise or a smell or whatever it is. And we have to establish better associations. And sometimes you have to desensitize it. Well, there's lots of aspects that, it's more complex when we get in on just on a podcast. But those are things that we need to do to help heal our brain. And let's face it, cops are horrible at admitting we're hurt.
This is news.
Yeah.
This is news.
It's not news to cops. It may be news to their family, maybe news to outsiders, but it's not news to cops. We deal with pain on a routine basis, and we have a belief a lot of times that we just have to be really stoic, right? Just shoulder whatever it is and keep it inside. And historically, cops are eating their own guns all the time because of it. It's like, hey, look, we want a different outcome, then we need to change our behaviors.
It's so interesting to me, like, how much of this stuff goes by in isolation. Like the average officer... Can I have another one? Yeah. That'd be awesome. Like, the average officer shows zero... Like, when I talk to them... Like, it takes me a long time to talk to an officer before I start to get a hint of, like, some of the depression or some of, like, isolation or negative thought patterns. But when I first meet them, there's like zero talk about that. And then it's like zero talk about it or suicide. There's nothing. It's, you know what? This makes sense because cops are all or nothing. It's like you either pass or fail. There's no fucking C's. There are no C's in this game. So is that it? That like why is it all or nothing?
Sometimes people view the world in a black and white, and it's not. A lot of times law enforcement is viewed as black and white, and it's not. And people have a hard time breaking out of that. But it has more to do with a culture. The culture in law enforcement isn't that you're supposed to have feelings and, attach to those feelings and all this other stuff. It's be stoic, shoulder it, shoulder on, move forward. Partially because when you're in the middle of the event, you have to.
Yes, which is not a bad thing.
But afterwards, if you don't know how to shut that off, if you don't know how to change gears, if you can't let go of that call, or you can't put the barbell down, right? You're not putting the barbell down. You're not putting the weight down. You're still holding it. And you can pretend that you're not. I've talked about my first crib death as an officer, as a young officer.
How old were you?
Probably 28 as a guess.
How long had you been an officer?
Maybe a year and a half. Not long. I wasn't a cop very long.
Okay.
So I go to this call, baby's dead, and you don't know, right? Everybody in that house, in theory, is a suspect. You don't know.
Why?
You don't know if it's the person who decides that it's a crib death is the ME later on. At that moment, it could be shaken baby.
So it's
it could
just
be poisoned.
just a parent that calls and you're going in there. Oh, what a shitty It's so shitty.
You don't know?
I never even thought about it being like a parent that shook their fucking child. Like, Jesus
Welcome
Christ.
to law enforcement.
Right. Like
Or
that.
a baby that was, we've had this, a baby that was sexually abused and heart stopped because of the anal penetration. Or you can say that, but remember, that's what law enforcement gets to deal with. Or a baby that got into parents' meth and now overdosed. Or on and on and on. And the vast majority of the population gets to go outside and smell the air and never think about the fact that those things happen.
I've never thought about that.
But we do. Not only do cops think about it, cops see it, deal with it, you know,
And all the while have to act like there's nothing happening because you have a fucking job to do.
Yeah, so I'm there. I don't know why this kid died. I'm not, you know, I've got a huge science background, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical examiner. I can't say, you know, why this kid died as I'm sitting in this house. So everybody there is potentially a suspect, right? Detectives aren't there yet. I'm dealing with the family and I'm being stoic, man. I'm on point, doing what I need to do.
How surreal for the parent too to have such a huge life event happen and have somebody acting like it's nothing. What a wild experience
But
for
you have
every.
to box
No, I know.
it, you know what I mean?
I'm just saying for everyone involved. What a insane setup. Okay,
Right.
go on. Sorry.
So the family's losing it. The family is literally just falling apart in front of me. And, you know, you feel for them so bad. But the problem is, if you get tied into the emotion, you can get your attention drawn away from the fact that you have a complete investigation you have to do, right? And then this baby never has justice. So you get tied into the emotional component, and now I'm in the middle with everything with the family, and I lose my objectivity, and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, which is to make sure that this child gets justice. If that's what needed, if it's just one of those things that happen, that can be too, but I don't know that yet. So I handle the call, we finish it, you know, I finish it up, and, you know, detectives end up relieving me, and I leave, and I drive a couple blocks down the road, I pull over my patrol car, and I bawl my eyes out for a good 10 minutes. Just, like, you know, those cries where you got snot coming out of your face.
It's like everything all built
thing,
up.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, other people it may not affect. It hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks with this kid. So you see stuff like that, right? You see, you know, young kids that are physically abused. You see, you know, women that have been raped that are just falling apart, right? I mean, you see all of this stuff. And to do your job, you gotta box it to some degree. You gotta compartmentalize it so that you can do a great job to make sure that justice is served. And you know, you can show compassion, but it's a fine line. You get too far one way, and you lose the ability to be objective and really carry out what you need to do.
Right.
So it's a tough balance, right? Problem is, when you're doing that, you're picking up the weight. The entire time, man, right? I'm holding that weight still, and when you leave and you don't acknowledge some of it and you don't deal with some of it, you're still holding on the weight. So the next call, you're holding on to the weight.
I have chills.
And the next call.
Look.
And the next call.
Look at that.
But that's how it works.
It.
And it may be that some calls you deal with no problem, no issues, and others you don't.
But maybe that's like a little baby 5-pound weight that gets added. But it's still like, because there's something that's happening. God damn it, officers. Because there's something that's always happening physiologically, right? If you walk into a restaurant and you're looking for exit signs, there's still something that's happening physiologically because you're looking for threat. You are looking to be the protector, which is why you're doing the job that you're doing. But there's a cost. Mm-hmm. There's a fee to do the work that you do, to do the job that you do, to show up. And it makes me really, you know, no wonder it's difficult for your community to thrive in your personal relationships and your experience outside of police work, because you're not trained on how to manage and cope with this information about the world.
Well, and not even just about the world, about you.
Well, and about
as
you,
a human,
for sure.
How humans function. A lot of cops end up with adrenal burnout. The adrenaline gland starts to burn out. So, real quick physiology. When information comes in, predominantly we're visual, creatures, comes in, hits my amygdala, section in my brain. You get that activation of the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland, HPA system. The adrenaline gland kicks in. When I'm functioning at a high level all the time, hyper-arousal, the adrenaline's constantly going, right? It's still going, it's going, it's going. That's why cops have hypertension like a son of a bitch.
Oh my God.
It's all of those things, because
Like
you're
the
going,
wheezing and like the...
Yeah, you're going, but the adrenaline's, you burn out. And, as we're sitting in this restaurant, I laugh because I'm facing the front, my back's to the wall.
I don't know any emergency exits in this place at all.
Right.
I don't even know where exits are.
But see, cops do that, and when you do it even worse, you're with your family, so you're switched on to some degree. There's very little time. You can look at Jeff Cooper's color code scale, which I got condition white, condition yellow.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. My buddy Dave told me about that.
Okay. That color code scale started with Jeff Cooper, guy that started Gunsight here in Arizona. It's a firearms training center up in Prescott, actually. So Cooper's color code scale. The Marine Corps adjusted it, added condition black. But the whole idea is, if I'm white, I'm completely unaware of the world around me. I'm not paying attention to anything. I'm sitting at home eating Cheetos.
Right.
Getting orange fingers. Condition yellow is I'm looking for threats in the environment or looking for something. I'm picking up different cues. Orange, I've started to hone in on something specific that's drawn my attention. And red is the fight is on. I've narrowed my attentional focus. I've fixated all my skills and all my capabilities to this particular task. Condition black, like I said, Marine Corps ended up adding it, which is the task is so overwhelmed, or I am so overwhelmed, I'm now in a shutdown, a freeze, right? Fight, flight, freeze. I'm now overwhelmed and I can't process, I can't function. The prefrontal cortex has got nothing. It's completely compromised.
That's your logic.
Yeah, the part of our brain that lets us problem solve, right? That
goes dark.
That frontal lobe. There's three channels that actually inhibit its ability to function, but I won't geek out, I promise. So, cops, if they're always functioning all the time, always at a yellow, no matter what they're doing, you never get a chance to shut down and let some of the recovery happen. So you see the adrenal burnout. You see that hypervigilance all the time.
But also
and
that
it eats at you.
And that also, I was thinking about it, and I said this on the last Sunday service, if you were fucking tuning in. If you think about your motivation in doing something, right? Just in general, if you've got this strong motivation to do something, you're more likely to accomplish it, right? So if your motivation behind living and being awake is survival versus your motivation is rest and safety, it's this small internal switch, and it's like a micro movement that happens underneath the skin, almost like in your heart, but it's something that changes the way that if you're going out to dinner because you want to feel like you want to enjoy company versus you're at the table and you're looking for what's going on, it changes things.
It does.
It changes things.
Yeah, it completely does. And in a lot of ways, you got to protect your family. We're protectors at heart, right? I'm going to make sure that the wolf doesn't come, but you miss out on sometimes the enjoyment and some of those other things. So do you have the ability to shut it off? We do designated drivers. I'm going to argue when cops go out, we need to have designated shooters, right? The guy that takes care of it if things go bad. If somebody comes in and is going to do an armed robbery, everybody else should be able to drink a little bit, and that one guy, he should be able to take care of business if we need to, and bad things happen. Because we never get a chance to relax.
Okay, so I introduce, in the program, I introduce officers to the wheel of emotion. Going, every single person listening to this podcast right now, you can fucking tell me right now, or you can say in your head that officer or those officers who are on your squad that are not loose cannons, okay? Let me not say that, but that are, and I don't even like using the word liability, but where you know that there's a slight hesitation that might happen, or that there's something that might be going on that you don't know all the information about. And that's the stuff that, like, I think more officers need to pay attention to. I feel like that's like that gray area.
Yeah, but we don't talk about our feelings. That's the other issue.
Which is so fucking crazy. Okay, so because
it's crazy. That's the culture.
I know, and
that's the culture.
It's only crazy because it's not my culture, right? It's my like it's like my third culture, like my secondary culture that I'm a part of. But to me, when I think about like my emotions, I think that that's the most excellent, most accurate guiding force that I have. And I know that that's not right, especially when I want to hear motherfuckers like you that are like use of force experts that can be like break down the science and the whatever. But like,
right. So there's a guy by the name of Dr. Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book. It's called The Happiness Hypothesis. Haidt is, his main focus, he's got a lot of stuff, but his main focus is moral leadership and morality. But he has got an amazing analogy that he uses, metaphor that he uses, excuse me. And I've talked about it because it ties into training, it ties into all kinds of stuff. And he says, our brain consists of two parts, the elephant and the elephant rider. We think the rider is in control because it's logical and it's rational and it's decision making. The elephant does the majority of the work, but it's also emotional. It's an emotional powerhouse. And as long as the rider can direct the elephant, we're good.
Yeah.
But once that elephant gets spooked by a lion, or whatever else, and the rider is just holding on for dear life, whatever you've trained that elephant to do, whatever the naturalistic component of that elephant or what it's been trained to do, is what it's going to do.
That right there, this is what I'm talking about. So like when it comes to not training as a team in knowing what emotionally triggers you and knowing what sets you off, this is what really, I feel like this is what holds a lot of people back. I feel like this is what creates a lot of liability. If you don't know that stuff,
if you don't know your trigger, you're screwed.
You don't understand the impact of potentially of every decision that you make. Okay, so like community policing, which I want to talk to you about. Yeah. Community policing is, and you kind of touched on it too with the autism thing, where there might be a self-soothing thing that's happening. There might be something that's happening, like there might be more to the story that you're not aware of because you've never been through that experience. But because you haven't been through that experience, or you don't understand how you are wired, you can literally create a similar situation of something that you've seen on the news, because that's the only frame of reference your brain has for traversing that situation. So your brain is so fucking smart, and it wants to just do automatically because that's how it's amazing.
It develops schema.
Yeah, what is that? That sounds like I know what it is. Right as he takes them out, I'm like, schema. So, okay, but like, your brain, it stores information, so it goes through.
It doesn't just store information; it categorizes information. That's what a schema is. So let's talk about a schema. So we'll do it based on.
Is this the neuroplasticity stuff?
No. If I pick up this beautiful beverage that inside of it is a dark liquid, the container itself is what? It's a glass.
Yeah.
If I pick up this one with ice, a straw, and a clear liquid, it's also a glass. You have a schema for what a glass is, even though this one is really made of glass and this one's made out of plastic. But you can generalize.
Oh, kind of like how like the letter A, you can see it in like multiple fonts and shapes, but like you know that it's an A. Okay.
As a child, I learned that a four-legged animal with fur, ears, a tail, and a cold nose is a dog. So when a dog comes walking in, a yellow lab, doggy, right? I learned that. And now all of a sudden a black lab walks in, doggy. Even though this one's a yellow lab and that one's a black lab, I can generalize because I have a schema for what a dog is.
Okay.
And a schema is how we organize, we collect and then organize data and information in the world and how we relate to it. It also deals with motor programs, but I won't get into that just yet. Now, on top of the schema for the dog, all of a sudden a cat walks in, tail, fur, ears, doggy. And all of a sudden my brain saying, no, that's not a doggy, that's a kitty. And now I've got, well, it's got four legs, it's got a tail, it's got fur, it's got some changes, it's a little bit different than a doggy.
So you're going through like these checklists.
Now I've got initial schema that is now going to build my new schema. So schemas build on other schemas.
So is this how bias works?
It's one of the ways. It's one of the ways that bias works, right? But it's also,
never thought about that.
It's also how we learn the world. I know that's a chair. I've never seen that particular chair before, but I know it's a damn chair.
Right.
This material, it kind of looks like some type of lizard print pattern, right? I've never seen it before, but
that's
I
clearly
know,
crocodile.
Whatever. It's a big freaking lizard, right? So my point being is I have a schema for that. But I also have schemas for behavior. So we'll get into officer-involved shootings.
If it looks like a duck.
If I have somebody that takes a low stance, an aggressive forward lean, their hand goes concealed into their waistband, and I see a very angry or a very distant look on their face, that is a pattern of behavior, a fact pattern that coincides with what I have a schema that person's getting ready to draw a weapon.
Okay, so you guys, this is where I decided to build TacMobility, was going, maybe what the world is seeing as bias and racism and blah, 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 fill in the blank, really is this patterned response, this automatic response that maybe some officers don't know. And the reason that I say that is because I have talked to countless, hundreds of officers that look at videos and go, ooh, I don't know if I would have done that, right? So it's there, it's you see it, but this is the science behind how it happens so that you can remove yourself from the equation and do better.
Yep. So let's talk about, we're going to go 8 different ways on this.
We have this timer going. Look at it, it's 40 minutes. We cannot go past 2 hours.
Got it. Well, then we're going to have to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
So the video does not tell you the story that the officer had. It tells you a story from a different perspective. It is not the same as the officer. So run with me down the rabbit trail.
Which you even talking about the schema of seeing somebody's low body posture and lean forward. And like when you were saying that, I was going at that and I go, absolutely. If I were to see that, I would take that as shit is going down. It wasn't until you just said that, how a video will, I've literally never thought about the experiential aspect of when you see somebody in a straight up stance, like they don't give a shit and it's happening. I've never seen that in a video, not one single time. And I don't doubt that that's present in some of these shoots where you're going like, man.
But you also have angles that are different, right? You have a camera angle
So
different than what the
insane.
officer sees. A camera also does not tell the whole story. It doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole story, right? So I've got a video that's running at 29.
Doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole, that's super good.
It runs at 29.97 frames per second in general, right? So I have space in between that isn't captured, and I'll do you one better. What if I told you that even on some of the best camera systems out there, all right, so you have...
You're like, bitch, how far back? He's pulling up his sleeves. Well, I just learned that like with your vision, you only see 1/trillionth of what's actually happening. So if...
Let's go back to that. Hold on. Work with me on this one first. If I have 30 frames, right, essentially a second worth of film, I can tell you that there is a potential that in those 30 frames, only one of them is an actual, complete record of what the camera saw. The rest of them...
1 in 30 for that 1 second.
Yes, and let me explain why. You have what's called an index frame, an I frame, you have a P frame or a prediction frame, and you have a B frame, which goes basically by phasing.
Is this happening in your brain or this
in
is
your video camera?
In my video camera. Oh.
So the way we take a video is it takes the information, it compresses it down to store it on this little bitty drive. Mm-hmm. By compressing it, it uses a mathematical algorithm. It literally breaks the info up. So my shirt is black in color.
So that's why it's never the same. That's why it's either...
Well, no. So here's one of the predictions. It predicts movement. It also predicts color and some other stuff. If on this image, this pixel right here, as I'm pointing to my chest, you can't see it on the audio, but I'm pointing right here. This pixel is black. The mathematical computation says, well, the chance of the rest of it being black is pretty high. So it compresses all of it. I don't need all of these to be pixels. I just know this in general area is all black, so I can compress the data. When I start compressing data, I actually am losing information.
So it's assuming.
It mathematically is predicting. So just because sometimes I've seen anomalies where you lose edges on weapons. I've seen there was a case where they tried to do a speed calculation in a video with this motorcycle. Because obviously this motorcycle was going this fast, blah, blah, blah. In one of the frames, there were 2 images of the motorcycle. Because the 2 frames on the back side were saying, okay, I need you to represent this data. It's not a complete record of everything that occurred. It's an interpretation. There was just case law out of California. Most people don't know this.
I feel like we need to make some room for my brain exploding.
Yeah, there's a lot. There was just a case out of California where the judge flat out said, yeah, you can't just say, well, the video says it all. No, it doesn't. Not at all, it doesn't. It loses a lot of information. It compresses data. It expands data. If you're not even looking at the original file. So this case, they proved, pretty clearly established that you need to bring, depending on the nature of the case, you need to bring people in that can analyze video. If that's your forensic information, especially when you start dealing with stuff that happens in under a second, because video doesn't really lie, but it doesn't tell the whole story either. And there's a lot of issues with video. We all think that video says everything. No, it doesn't. Not at all. And there is a huge, people like myself.
Which we believe that. Which people of the community, people of any community believe that. But specifically people in communities of color, we believe that, which is part of the cry is going we're different. We're not not everything is what you see. There's more. And
again, the camera caught it from that angle. So the human eye has what's called foveal vision, focused vision, 1 to 3 degrees off center. Easiest way to handle it, everybody on the cast, stick your thumb out there, and if you look at your thumbnail, that's about 1 to 3 degrees, okay? And I'll prove it to you.
1 to 3 degrees what?
Of in focus vision, what you truly see in focus. I'm gonna prove it to you.
Okay.
Y'all can't see it, but she's gonna freak out in a second.
Okay. Am I putting my thumb down?
Put your thumb down.
Okay.
I want you to keep focused on my nose. Okay. I'm going to put this right next to my head, but you can't look at it directly. You have to keep your focus on my nose. Okay. But I want you to read what it says. You can't.
I can't. I see a shape.
But it's not in focus, is it?
No, not at all.
That's the lack of foveal vision. Now, if you do a saccade, which is a quick break to the side, you can read it says happy hours, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we don't see everything. A camera sees everything. When you're looking at a video, everything on that camera is in focus. You see
this is the threat response, which you're in tunnel vision, you're focused, you're in what's in front of you. You're not paying attention because that's a distraction.
You can't see it. Your eyes don't.
That's valid. I could not see anything. Okay.
We think we do, but we don't even understand our basic concept about human vision.
Do that again.
I'll pick a bigger font. All right?
Okay.
Keep looking at my nose.
Okay. Ow, I can't!
I'm literally touching the menu to the side of my head.
Oh my God,
and you're not even 3 feet away. Don't tell COVID cops, right?
No, I can't see it. I think I know what it says, but I can't.
That's because your brain predicts and fills in the details. And I need you to think about that for a second. When our eyes actually can't see it, our brain will fill in the details.
Because it has to make sense, because your brain is literally trying to constantly code and keep safe and stay alive and be better and grow. Oh my God. See, this is the part that's so fucking cool to me.
But a video is completely in focus. So when you're watching a video, right, on your screen...
Oh, so I can choose to focus on X, Y, fucking whatever.
But if you're judging an officer's incident, you have the luxury of being able to stop it and look at the entire event, and it's all in focus.
So then they've got...
An officer literally is seeing this much in focus at any given time.
And guys, tunnel vision is a fucking son of a bitch. Do it again?
It's no bigger than that.
That's crazy.
It's not crazy. It's the way our physiology... We think we know, but we don't. That's
what I'm saying. What's crazy about it is how much I think I know as like the average just regular person.
We don't really, we don't get into, hey, this is how your vision works. We'll talk about memory here in a bit. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
So the video camera captures everything in focus, which is not how our vision works. The video camera also uses a fisheye lens to capture more field of vision, which distorts it, and it makes it look different in distance. It doesn't see in 3 dimensions the way we do. Mm-hmm. You can't see how far things are away, what it relates to stuff. There's so much about the camera that it does not function the way our eyes do. But we want to use video and go, oh, see, the video says it all. No, it doesn't. Not in any way, shape, or form.
But the reason that people are using video... So here's what kind of intrigued me about Lon, because I don't think that what he's saying is necessarily... Like, most officers are going like, yeah, I know, right? Like, it's a completely different perspective. So what I appreciated about Lon's understanding of all of this is that he holds all of that information as valid and true, but also has you also have a very like devil's advocate approach to some of the social issues that are happening, some of the approaches to community policing and interaction with people. So like this is something that's very fascinating to me, is because there's no shortage of podcasts that are talking about the problems and the issues and what's wrong. But I want to focus on what are some actionable steps, what are things that... So I believe that it is incredibly difficult to balance compassion and courage as an officer, and knowing which one to lean into and knowing which one to have as a driving force. So knowing what you know and having the experience of community policing, how do officers begin to make better decisions with this stuff? How do they approach it better?
It starts with better training.
Right. Okay. So knowing that like training is in some locations at a halt, not even a fucking conversation. How does the individual officer begin this on their own?
Well, and I'm not one of those people that grew up in law enforcement and said, well, if the department wants me to go to it, they'll send me. I spent a lot of my own money training. I spent a lot of my own money reading, taking classes, because ultimately it's my life. Now, don't get me wrong. Would it be nice? Yeah. Do I think agencies should? Yeah. Do I think you're going to see a change? Yeah. And here's one of the reasons. I adolesced, right? We talked about, the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training.
Just rattled that off.
I've done them a lot. We are coming out with a publication. Well, they are coming out with a publication in 2 weeks, which is a evidence-based, science-based training. It's how all training needs to be evidence-based. I wrote a section of it, so I was able to contribute to it a little bit. And what they're going to come forward about some suggestions on how our training. Law enforcement accepted evidence-based training or evidence-based response to things,
right? But
we haven't accepted evidence-based training. A lot of the stuff that we're doing in the 1970s, we knew was horrible. Well, my background's in exercise and sports science.
Are you talking about one of my guests talked about how the training, some of the pain compliance or controlled methods or these Aikido moves. He's where it takes you thousands of hours to be proficient at, not fucking 8 hours every 2 years. So it's that kind of the stuff?
Yeah, well, you got to back up even for that. So my background's exercise and sports science, right? My concentration in physiology, biochemistry. I go through college and I start a master's program and I learn all of these things about how to train athletes. So I get ready to go into the academy and I'm thinking, hey, all this evidence, all this research that went into how to train an athlete to do psychomotor skills, which ultimately law enforcement is the engagement of psychomotor skills under high levels of performance.
Psychomotor, what?
Physical skills, drawing a firearm, right? I got to think about it and I got to engage it, right? Using a baton, using a taser. My brain has to be engaged and I have to carry out the skill. There's a huge parallel between law enforcement performance and sports performance. Think about it. If an athlete is playing a major game, right, and they get to make a free throw, is there pressure on them?
100%.
Do they have to engage in a task that requires physical skill?
Yeah.
So does God. Only they don't have a championship ring pressure or a Stanley Cup pressure.
And they plan with scenarios.
It's their life.
Yeah.
They also get a lot less training than athletes do. But going into the academy, I'm thinking, hey, look, all of the stuff I know about how to train athletes, I'm sure is going to be built into the academy. I get into the academy, nothing. What we're doing in the academy, traditional block style training, we knew in the early 70s.
What's block style training?
It is engaging in the same behavior over and over and over again until you get some level of performance, then moving on to something else. So,
as opposed to what?
We'll talk about interval and interleave training in a second. I get through the academy and I'm like, okay, when I get to AOT, Officer Advanced Training, then I'm sure I'm going to start seeing all this stuff that we know about.
You're just like rubbing your hands together, like waiting for the next one.
I get an AOT, it's the same style of block training. So it wasn't until I got into the SWAT world where I started to see a little bit of it. And it's only because the SWAT community has some tie-ins to some of the special operations community, and you see a lot of science actually interjected into the science or into the performance of our top tier 1 special
tier
forces
tactical team. Yeah, I'm gonna go tour their little fucking their trailer.
Tell Jason I said hello.
I think I'm gonna meet with Danny.
Well,
I don't know who Jason is. Jason's the owner, right?
He's the owner. He's a friend of mine.
I don't know Jason.
He's good people.
I don't know.
So it wasn't until I got in the SWAT world I started seeing some of that tie-in into how we should be training. So most of my career was me fighting the established, norm of block style training and going, look, we need to do better, we need to do more, we need to do more scenario based, we need to do more interleave training. We train for performance, we don't train for learning. Learning is long-term change to behavior.
That's what I want to do. Like, proactive approach to everything just seems like the most cost-effective and the most effective.
But it's a cost-effective long-term, not short-term. Short-term block training is better.
Oh, yeah, that's stupid.
But I don't care about short-term because that's just performance at that moment. What I want is learning.
We need effectual change.
I need a change in skill and behavior. So I have to do different training methodologies if I want long-term changes. What we do currently in law enforcement predominantly is block style training that has a very short window and it's only a performance issue. So traditional square range training. I sit there and I'm punching holes in paper. It has little to do with a gunfight. But
there's zero stress inoculation. There's zero scenario.
Shoot, move, communicate. I mean,
move, communicate. That is, I am not a police officer, but god damn it, that sounded like what everyone needs to be doing.
Well, we know it's what we should be doing. It's not what we do.
Because I feel like there's so many, when you're juggling that much stimuli, how are you going to juggle it if you've never juggled it before?
But we spend hours at the range.
Because it's fun. Well, because also it's a de-stressor. Well, and it's also, it feels good.
It's not a de-stressor. For a lot of people, it's a stressor. I can talk about that too. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never met anyone that was stressed out by the range.
When I took over my firearms training program, I had people that told me they were happy about the changes that we made because the staff would stress them out so much that when they would go to the range, sometimes they'd pull their car over and they would throw up because they were so scared and nervous. Because the firearms staff, what they would do is they would actually yell at people while they're performing. They'd get behind them. So if I'm moving from one barricade to another on the range, as they're running from one barricade, the train staff would be behind them, yelling and screaming and making fun of them if they drop a magazine and the range staff at the time are like, well, we're doing it because a gunfight's stressful. Okay.
But you wouldn't be made it fun. I guess now.
When I took over,
now for riot training, that might not be bad.
I asked all those people, why are you doing it? The argument was, well, it's because it's stressful. I said, okay, but if you're involved in a real gunfight, and you've got a threat coming from downrange, and somebody jumped up behind you and started yelling and screaming, what would you do? well, I'd punch him in the mouth, or I'd arrest him, or handcuff him, or whatever. So what you're telling me is you deal with the immediate threat, the biggest threat to you, and then continue with the other one. I'm going to start letting people punch you in the mouth. I said the stress should come from where the environment creates it, not from you. As the instructor, you're there, and I hate the term instructor. I despise it. We should use coach. Because a coach gets the best performance out of you in any given day. An instructor, all they have to do is teach a manual, and when I'm done and I hit the last page, my job is done. But a coach is always working on better performance. A coach is always trying to get more out of you and be able to get the best out of you for that day. And the only absolute about human behavior is that it varies. So I could have a great day, I can have a crappy day. But even on my crappy days, my job as a coach is to get the best out of you. I hate the term instructor. It drives me nuts, but that's a whole another conversation. So we do training wrong. I've taught, for the largest manufacturer of force-on-force technology throughout the States for about 8 years. So I get a chance to go to a lot of different agencies and see what their training programs are. And the vast majority of training programs are not in line with what we know.
Okay, so I was listening to it was a Joe Rogan podcast with Nancy Panza, who's like that police psychologist. She's like a more famous one. And he's like, I don't understand why it's so hard to implement some of these new changes. And her response was that police in general are so very paramilitary in that, like, you do what has worked in the past and you just don't rock the boat. Why? It seems like it's just like digging your heels in at this point. Like, the world has changed. Science has illuminated so much to where I don't understand why so many departments.
I don't think it's worked. I would argue it's not working. The reason...
Agreed. So
we do what we
why?
do because it's training inbreeding. It's what we've always done.
But why is there such a like indifferent, not indifference, but like people just don't want to see change.
They don't. It's not that they don't. They just don't know any better. If you look at, if you pull NRA's,
what's NRA?
National Rifle Association, they actually have pictures. They have pictures of old police training from like the 50s. Firearms training from then to now, tactics and stuff have changed, right? You don't see the FBI stance, which is a low center stance, no use of sights, one hand out, one hand shooting.
Yeah, I hate it when you see that.
Well, but the old pictures, that was what you saw, because that's what they trained.
Because that's what they knew.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
And then you started seeing an evolution, and part of the thing that trained or pushed evolution, whether you like it or not, is competitive shooting. Because competitive shooters are like, I got to beat this guy. I need to get time. Now, do I think that everything in competitive shooting should be in law enforcement? No. In competitive shooting, barricades are you looked at as something to get around. In gunfight, a barricade is a life-saving opportunity.
Yeah.
So very different mindsets. But a lot of the competitive shooters started pushing. But that was science. That was evidence. It was me competing against somebody. If I was faster, if I was better, my way works. I'm more accurate. That pushed it. But you don't see a change in the training methodologies in law enforcement in general.
Right.
The DT programs, defensive tactics programs, the TASER programs, they're almost always block training or siloed.
Why?
Because it's easier to schedule. Today, we're going to do baton. Tomorrow, we're going to do this. But I've never been involved in an incident in law enforcement where, hey, this is a dedicated baton event. Everybody get your batons out. You don't know. You got to move back and forth between verbal commands to my firearm, put my firearm away, go to my taser. You don't know. And because we don't create those interleaved, think of interleaved as being shuffling a deck of cards. I'm literally putting training in between. I'm not doing all one thing. I'm not doing all baton today. I'm going to do some baton, and I'm going to intermix it. I'm going to have taser, and you have to make decisions. All of this stuff gets woven in, which is what law enforcement really truly does. We don't do training that way because it's hard to do training that way. It's tough to do training that way, but it works. It works. The science is clear. You can argue it all day long. The science is clear. Go to athletes. And my other thing that pisses me off is you'll hear people say, "Well, you can't train decision making." Yes, you can. Athletes train decision making all the time. We've done decision making and training for athletes for a long time. You see it on the basic concept.
That's crazy to me that someone would think that you can't train decision making. Decision making to me, and this is my I don't have any education in this, but like decision making comes to like being exposed to that type of environment enough to where you have the ability to fall back on your logic and thinking abilities
and overcome error. I have never in my life
overcome error. What does that mean?
Error in the environment. So go to block style training. I'm going to do baton. I'm going to do baton training. I've got 20 people out there. I've got an instructor. The instructor is going to bark out numbers. And when he says 1, I'm going to hit the bag and I'm going to say, get back. So he says 1, I hit the bag, get back. And then I get back into my position. And then he says 2, and I hit the bag, get back. And then he says 3, that's block style training. I'm going to tell you, I've never had anybody sit still when I went to hit him with a baton.
You've hit someone with a baton?
I was a cop for 20 years.
That's what's so, like, you and I, totally different experiences. Like, I think I've hit someone like once. That bitch deserved it. Okay? Bitch deserved it. So it's training that is so okay. So think about it like we said. Your brain falls back onto the training that it's had,
Elephant
or
rider.
or survival.
Go back to elephant and rider. What have you trained the elephant to do? The absolute lie that we love to tell ourselves is that we rise to the occasion. The hell you do.
Yeah.
You don't rise to the occasion. You default to your lowest level of training. Whatever you train that elephant to do, using emotion, because it's an emotional powerhouse, and a proper of development of skill is what it's going to do.
And
if you don't do that, if you think the rider is going to be in control, the rider is only in control with low levels of stress. Cops will tell you all day long. Have you ever been involved?
With low levels of stress. Did you say that again? They're only in what?
You're only in full control of your prefrontal cortex under lower levels of stress. You can gain more control through coping strategies such as autogenic breathing, positive self-talk. There's all kinds of other stuff. But in general, stress inoculation training is done wrong throughout the United States too. But that's a whole.
But which is
we could do another
We're
podcast
fucking gonna have to. But like this is also why. So like on just to take training out of the scenario. So if you ever been like super like have a lot of anxiety or obsessive thinking and you kind of like not maybe verbalize it to yourself, but sort of think like, I can sort through this. It's actually one of those things that becomes scientifically like almost not impossible, but it becomes more difficult for you to think your way out of a situation because that prefrontal cortex is not lit up. It's not operating the same way.
The amygdala and the HPA system's compressing it.
You are perceiving threat. It's no longer, the logic part is no longer, oh, I've never thought about this. So your logic centers they're not necessary. When it comes to like survival, like dog eat dog, do whatever the fuck it takes to stay alive, my logic cannot be a part of that because I think, oh, I can't kill this person, right? Versus, no, I'm in danger. I'm going to kill this person.
But I've
literally never fucking thought about that, and I teach it.
We've known for a long time if we can get people to bring their arousal level down through autogenic breathing, through training, those kind of desensitizations, we get used to it. We've been in a sandbox before. We know I've been in this event. I've been exposed to it before. We know they perform better. They have more ability to maintain.
I only imagine like someone going like, "That's a turd." I've been in this sandbox before. I know that's a turd.
But the prefrontal cortex, if we can maintain more control over it, we tend to do better. If you go to,
so that's why we want it. That's why we get more in our thoughts.
Well, no, it's not so much that. Is if we can keep our arousal level down and not let the elephant take over completely, right? Not let the monkey brain, the limbic system, kick in and take over. We can perform better in certain environments. But that's where reality-based training, scenario-based training, true stress inoculation, not stress exposure training, but true stress inoculation where we develop coping strategies and practice them inside
Y'all,
context.
listen.
To include the one that everybody knows about. Everybody knows about autogenic breathing. Very few people have ever done autogenic breathing.
What's autogenic breathing?
4-count breathing. So 4 count in, hold for 4, exhale for 4.
My ADD does not allow me to finish that square.
Well, there's other ways of doing it.
So I take you guys through the 360-degree visualization or alternate nostril breathing. That's what he's talking about, okay? So it's intentional, focused breathing rather than just your automatic, however your body decides to breathe.
What are the two functions of the human body that we have both automatic and autogenic control over? In other words, we can think about it or we don't have to think about it. What are they?
Your breath and your heart rate.
Nope, you can't control your heart rate. Your breath and?
I feel like I can control my heart rate now.
Not directly, not immediately. Immediately right now you can stop breathing, but you can't immediately change it. It takes a little bit of time.
My vision? I don't know.
You're close.
No, my eyelids.
You blink. The only two things you have both conscious and subconscious control over. You automatically blink.
Oh, that's right. I
without thinking.
can't shut my ears off.
You automatically blink
I can't
without
stop
thinking
feeling.
about it. But you blink when you want to. You breathe when you want to, but you don't have to think about it. Those are the two. Anyway, so we've got to keep in mind that if I can get somebody to bring their arousal level down and they can perform better, they will problem solve better. And it's not that they can't do it, we just have to provide better training. More stress inoculation training, more reality-based training, more simulated event training. But then we teach all the coping skills and everything with it.
And it takes literally one time. Think about it. If I were to slap Lon on the side of his head right now.
My bald head.
If I were to slap you, right? If I went to go do it again, you would put your arm up. Like your brain works at speeds in which you can't even fucking fathom. So to put yourself through training, appropriate stress inoculation training, simulated training, those are all things that have immediate impact on your brain. So like I mentioned earlier, and we won't get super into this because we don't have fucking time, but neuroplasticity and your brain's ability to physically grow and apply any bit of information to any ongoing similar situation. It's insane how your brain works. So why don't more people have simulators? So you mentioned in the state of, no. The guy I talked to before, the other, your cohort said that in the state of Arizona, so listen up you Arizona officers, in the fucking state of Arizona, if your department requests a simulator, you can get a free virtual simulator because of billions of dollars that were passed with this bill. And the only department that I know that's using it excellently, I don't even know if that's a word, regularly, is Tucson. So I can think of one. Why?
Tucson uses it frequently. There's a few other agencies that do, but for the most part, Tucson's done a phenomenal
Also,
job.
everyone makes fun of Tucson.
But they say what their training staff, what they've been doing is phenomenal. I mean, they really.
I think it's literally amazing. Mm-hmm. I think it's so amazing because it's this super impactful training that puts you face to face with your triggers. One of the things that I talk about in the program is the only way that you can do true de-escalation training is if you understand what triggers you personally, and if you don't understand what you personally bring to a situation, what liabilities exist within you, you're missing a huge component of this of the conversation that's happening right now. Am I right?
Yep.
Of course I'm right.
You gotta know your triggers.
I asked you. But that's a huge thing. If you don't know that one of the things I talk about is what's something that makes you really angry, that somebody reverts to saying, that are microaggressions towards police, oh, you're only doing this because I'm black, right? If when you hear a statement like that, you automatically put your walls up and you're just fuck this guy, and what else is he hiding, right? If that's your natural mode of whatever, if you don't know that, you're likely to create a situation that could be that could be avoided.
That's because you're letting emotion rule and dictate.
And emotions rule and dictate when you avoid understanding how they work. So a lot of officers, this is their story, where emotions have been viewed in a past life. It seems like eons ago for people outside of law enforcement. But if you look at emotions as being these really unbridled, which they can be, I don't even know the words that I'm looking for, something that's not controllable, and so you don't incorporate understanding them, then you're missing out on how they can really make your police work great, right?
They can make it or they can hurt it. Here's the biggest problem that I think most cops have. They take things personal. When your ego gets involved, in general in police work, you're probably wrong.
Which ego is a big part of your job.
But your ego needs to be removed.
But I don't think that a lot of people. No, I'm good, thank you.
I'll give you an example. If you and I are in a situation, and hey, look, you got an arrest warrant. Stand up, turn around, put your hands behind your back. Blah blah blah. F you, cop. If you didn't have that badge, you didn't have that gun, and the moment my ego gets involved. I've seen
like 20 different videos of this.
The moment my ego gets involved, and so fuck you too, and I'm gonna kick your ass on the other stuff. Your ego's involved. In general, if you say something that you're saying it to feel good, you're wrong because it's your ego talking. It's like, look, man, I really don't want to have to fight you. I would really prefer that we handle this another way, that we don't have to go down this path. They're not even attacking you. They don't know you.
So do you guys have like rioter ones? This is one of the things that I said. If you've never had somebody yell in your face and call you a piece of shit and record you up to your fucking nose, what do you think you're gonna do when it happens? You're gonna be like, back the fuck up.
I would love to put heart rate monitors.
This is literally what we're doing. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing on Friday is going, I need you to understand what's happening. That slow boil that is like this erupt.
Slow.
I can't imagine. I've never been in a situation where somebody has been, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where somebody has like been in my face and like wished ill.
You've lived a charmed life.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone loves me. You know that, right? Like, you love me and you don't even know me. So, like, I've never... So, the average person does not know. The average officer, unless you've had training, you don't know what you're going to do. Well, you don't know what childhood bullshit's going to come out. And even if you someone yells at you.
Even if you have training, you can have a bad day, right? I mean, you're let's say that you're having marital problems and your kids are struggling at school and you're having a hard time, with the bills. 2 days prior, before all that stuff hit, you might be able to handle somebody in your grill. But it all's cumulative. That all adds up.
Yep.
And now I got somebody in my face, literally a foot away in my face, yelling and screaming.
Not today.
The subconscious mind.
Not today.
The amygdala is picking up on it. That is a threat. Everything about that is screaming threat. They're
it's
yelling
not even
and they're
just
close.
It's a threat to your physical whatever, but it's also a threat to what's happening. What's happening mentally. So when you're preoccupied with your thoughts, when all of a sudden you realize that something's been trying to get your attention, you're like, what the fuck? Like, you respond really abruptly. Like, you can't not. These are just human functions that I think people have had too much time dwelling on with little to no understanding on what's actually happening, to where people have negatively identified with some of this stuff. So I'm very glad that you are out there doing, work to educate people and officers on, like, essentially it's freedom and liberation to not be a prisoner to, like, how you feel.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we started down this path, though. We talked about...
What are we even here for?
We were here on community policing. And we went down back to science, which is kind of my default. But yeah, so I spent 3 years on a bike unit, which all I did was community-oriented policing. And our goal was to really get at the root cause of things. You and I talked before about the concept of over-policing, right? And when cops hear over-policing, it's like, well, that doesn't exist. That's a made-up term.
No, that's where a lot of these statistics about black-on-black crime comes from. It's over-policed areas that equate to a lot of this stuff.
Well, agencies send resources to where crimes are, right? So if I have a high crime rate, I'm going to send people in, and what we do is we find other low-level crimes, because that gets me into higher-level crimes. Very basic concept. I hated running traffic.
My boyfriend does this. I've never thought about that.
I hated running traffic, but I loved running traffic to get dope.
Because it gets you. Yep. See.
I didn't write a bunch of tickets, but I sure as hell looked for a lot of warrants, and can I find dope, and can I find stolen goods, and all kinds of stuff. So lower level crimes get you to higher level crimes. That's just a reality. And individuals that like to engage in crime, a lot of times their entire life is lived that way. So they tend to do things in front of you that allow you to go talk them and stop them and write them tickets or all kinds of stuff. So a lot of times, agencies will see high crime rates and they'll send resources in there. When they go in there, you'll initially see a huge spike, right, in lower level crime arrests, because that's what they're there to do, and find out who lives where, the connections and everything else. The problem that we run into as a society is the cops are doing their job, but what we're not doing is going, okay, what in that neighborhood is supporting that type of environment?
Right.
With the community or
We're not talking
stuff.
about title loan companies. We're not talking about liquor stores. We're not talking about all these people that are exploiting and preying on low-income individuals. It's just the police officers, which there's a whole aspect to that. But
So we would go in, if I had a house or an apartment complex where I had a lot of level crime coming from the same location, we would do what's called a criminal abatement. So we would tell the property owner, this is your property that you're responsible for. There's a lot of crime that's going on. And either A, you take care of it, or B, we're going to sit there and start charging you. So now if you've got an apartment that we know is running dope, they start kicking people out that are running dope. Now there's no dope in the neighborhood. It starts to diminish, or they go somewhere else. We had individuals that we knew were renting to individuals they should not be renting to, and they were committing all kinds of different crimes. We went in and said, we're going to do a criminal abatement, and as a matter of fact, we'll do you a favor, because your property is worth more money if it was just property without these structures on it. How about you let us have the fire department burn them, put it out, burn them, and then we'll clear the entire thing off for you, and you have a fresh slot of land that you could sell for more money than what it's worth right now. And that's what we did.
that's really horrible, though.
No.
That's horrible from a community aspect. 100%. I disagree hard.
Hear me out. So that property owner sells it, and now we have a better business that supports the community.
Yeah, that's gentrification, though, bro.
No.
Yes.
Depends on the nature of what's there. So you're telling me...
I don't agree with this.
You're telling me two structures...
I get what you're saying.
Two structures that didn't have running water. It's my foot.
Sorry.
Two structures that didn't have running water, that were illegal, and a trailer that was out there. By removing that and building apartments or building housing that people can afford, you're building to the community. It's not that you're saying, hey, bad, we're trying to take away. We're trying to add to the community.
But what usually gets put in place is not adding to the community. It's adding to the greater real estate.
Then you fix that.
Right, but that's not what happens. So what happens is gentrification in neighborhoods, which then drives out people who were there for shit that happened in the 50s to begin with, right? So they're consolidated to the cities goes down, crime comes in. Solutions like that, which do again meet the lower crime.
Yeah, but even by your definition, I'm not talking about a family that's been there and have been established. I'm talking about a slumlord that was renting to people.
No,
and
I
the
know.
people that were there.
I agree. I totally
on the community.
I totally agree with what you're saying. So I think that keeping those people there, I don't think that helps the solution. But I also believe that going in and having something like that happen also doesn't help this. It doesn't create a solution because it just drives things out. It drives up housing costs and it makes it unaffordable for people, which displaces people. So I hear what you're saying. So I digress. But go on.
But we can go back to, so how do you fix it? And the way that you...
Totally.
Yeah, the way
you
that
change people, you change the people that are in the community because they don't understand that there is a complete psychosis that goes with low income.
Learned helplessness.
Yeah, where it's not even and it's really shitty too when people from my communities of color that hear helplessness, it's only shame inducing rather than it's going, no, this is what's happening though. This is the mentality that you would rather you're in the cycle of jail, but you would rather figure out how to lead a life of crime versus getting a job where you make $10 an hour.
If you don't see there's a way out,
that's what I'm saying.
Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
If you don't know there's a path or there's a way out, you will never look for it, right? If you don't know that the prison door is open, you're never going to try it, right? So that's really what it boils down to. So when you talk about making the impact is going and saying, okay, if I'm going to have a family that is on welfare, I'm going to mandate that this family also has tutors to ensure that the kids are performing well in school. So
that to me feels like solution, and what you're talking about feels like the things that have worked in the past where, again, it may be solving an immediate issue, but it's not tackling the systemic issues that are the
but
root
if I have an
cause.
apartment complex where a renter is literally preying on the rest of the group there because they're selling dope or whatever else, I don't burn the apartment. But what I do is I tell the apartment complex, this person is either going to snap in line or they're going to go.
I agree with that.
So now I may not be able to completely arrest this person, but I can assure that that person is not preying on that community.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm not changing income or anything like that in that. And we did that all the time. Yeah. This was a slumlord who literally was renting places that nobody should be staying in anyway. Hence the reason when we went to Burnham, we had to hazmat the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And then, we built stuff that actually supports the community. When you talk about some of the things that you see in lower socioeconomic areas, you made this statement about,
Mm-hmm.
liquor stores. And unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah.
We have
title loans. Like I thought, so here's, you know what,
shops.
I said to myself, I drove by, I live in a pretty affluent neighborhood. You don't know this because you're from the West Side. I'm just kidding. But like, I'm over there in the East Valley and I was driving, I know. Well, it was like right on the edge of Mesa, right? So where it gets shitty.
When she said I live in the East Side, she literally tilted her head in the air and put her thrusted her jaw forward. I live on the East Side.
I live on the East Side. So there's this title loan place that I drive by on my way to work. And I'm like, this is where we need to see people protesting. Also, yes, do whatever you feel like you need to do. But these are the people, these are the organizations and the companies that come in and exploit low income people and the cycle of poverty and how that just plays into...
Let me clarify. My dad was disabled when I was a child, and he raised my brother and I. I grew up on food stamps. Mm-hmm. I understand what it means to be poor. Yeah. I get it, right? So, can I ever sit there and say, well, I know what it means to be black or brown or whatever? No, hell no, I'm a white boy.
Poverty
Let me tell you, you sit there with your dad, and he's literally, this is when food stamps were literally coupon books, and he's paying for food at the register, and the looks that you're getting from people behind you as your dad's paying for food, you remember that shit as a kid, right? It's impactful to you. But when you talk about it, we say that it's a police issue. It's not. It's a socioeconomic issue.
It is. So this is one of the things that I think it's really difficult for my community to hear, and I think it is a really beautiful thing that officers or people who are white, I'll just say that people who are white, the ways that white people are able to view themselves individually and see hope and see opportunity, that is the goal. Like that's the goal. And it's really, really hard for people who are in cycles of low income families to understand. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard for people who are black to understand that it's not just about color, that it is about income and who is trying to exploit you for what you're doing. So I think it's really important to talk about all the things that play into it, that it's not just police that are showing up, but it's important for police to show up and be there as a community face, like you said, biking, right? Talking to people. So that's another kind of like fun topic, is like a lot of officers don't know how to talk to people. And now that COVID, right? Yeah. Like interaction with citizens is minimal. Like how does community...
It's not even just COVID, unfortunately, because the culture that we have right now, right? I mean, you have a depolicing that's occurring.
Yeah.
Why would I go do something when, all of a sudden I'm going to get hammered no matter what I do? And that's a belief system that you start to see. And unfortunately, the communities that are going to get hit the hardest with this are communities of color. They don't need depolicing. They don't. We need to make sure that the laws that are there.
I want to be protected, like on the real. Like don't get me fucking wrong. Like there's some video that I saw of like I didn't watch the whole thing so now that I'm like upset, like my target audience is law enforcement, I've subscribed to a bunch of different things on my feed and I can't watch half of the videos. It's like 2 seconds. I'm like, no, I can't see that. But like we want to feel safe and we want to feel protected. The problem is that it hasn't been presented to communities in a way that is effectual and that makes sense. And that's where there's like this backlash, this constant like refusal to engage with officers. So how does an
snitches get stitches?
So how does that, like, how did you do that portion of it? Like,
well, you know what's funny? I mean, like I said, I was on the bike unit. I'm going to tell you that
which I've always kind of giggled.
Oh, I was an amazing tool, man. Nothing was more fun than riding up on a bunch of people in a park late at night, and literally they didn't know you were there because the bikes are so quiet, and pulling a joint out of somebody's mouth. As they look up and go, oh, fuck, you're a cop.
Oh, my God.
So the bike unit was phenomenal, man. I could do all kinds of low exposure. If I wanted to be darked out and I wanted to do, surveillance on somebody that's running dope or somebody that's, stealing stuff, I could do that. If I wanted to be high profile, I could be seen everywhere I'm at. You had so much tool, available in a bike unit. But, that community-oriented policing, we've got to the root of things. I mentioned the broken window theory. Broken window theory says if you have a house that's vacant, that vacant house can sit in a neighborhood forever and nothing will happen. One day some kid shows up, throws a rock through the window, and that window's now broken and there's nobody there to fix it. So now people realize, well, that window's broken, nobody's there. Hey, a bunch of other kids now break in the back and they start trashing it. And then the homeless people move in, and now you got homeless people in, and then it becomes a drug house. So it's just this aspect of take care of the house. We used to do cleanups. We would get volunteers in Home Depot and all kinds of stuff. We would go into neighborhoods and we would take all of their trash and we'd plant flowers and we'd trim their hedges and we would paint their houses.
You want to know what the police department just started doing as their community outreach? They made baseball cards.
Baseball cards are old school stuff. That's just for kids.
Excuse me. If you're trying to be impactful in a community, how much money goes into making baseball cards versus how much money does it take for you to go clean someone's fucking yard and show up?
We didn't need a lot of money. I would get volunteers. I would get Home Depot to donate stuff. I would get paint stores to donate stuff. We did a cleanup. There's a picture somewhere. We did a huge cleanup up north. There was a bunch of illegal dumping, and took care of that entire neighborhood. I am literally sitting on W. Stephen Martin's RV, addressing this huge crowd. We didn't spend a lot of money on it. We would just do these neighborhood cleanups. We worked with our city code. City code would see all these violations that would occur in the neighborhood and say, hey, look, we've got a cleanup coming. We would like to help you take care of these violations, which is, everything from cars in the front yard to, whatever it is. And we would get volunteers. We get 200-300 volunteers to show up. They'd clean people's backyards out. They'd help them paint fences, help them paint, doors. So we would beautify the neighborhood so the neighborhood could be something that people were proud of. That was all part of our community policing and our outreach stuff. It wasn't a lot of money. It was all donation.
And people want to donate, people want to donate to shit like this. But also it comes back to, again, to reiterate the education portion of it. When you don't understand the impact of having a vehicle in your front yard that's had the hood open for 2 years, when you don't understand the impact that has, then you don't have motivation to change it. Mm-hmm. So this hands-off approach to shitty areas is not helpful to the people that live there. It's not helpful to your job because you're going to see either the exact same amount of crime, if not more.
No, you'll see more.
Right? So in the long run, community policing just seems to be the shortest thing. So I got started with this program by interviewing about community policing, and a lot of the issues that I ran into was sort of like this wall that a lot of officers who do find that as their area of passion come up against, and that's cooperation from either side.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, but if you can show the WIFM, what's in it for me? If I can give you the WIFM, what's in it for you? I usually I can get some movement. If I show up with, community code enforcement, whatever it is, and I say, look, we've got a bunch of volunteers that are going to help you pull all that trash out of your side yard. We're going to throw it away at no cost to you. We want to clean up your yard, trim all of your bushes at no cost to you. We'd like to plant some flowers that we got donated from Home Depot at no cost to you. Will you help and make sure, just help pick out the flowers that we put? If you're physically disabled, you can't help us out, whatever it is. If you can, would you help us as far as dedicate what you want done in your yard? What's in it for them? If you could show them what's in it for them, I never had problems. Now, the flip side, though, is if we showed up in your neighborhood and we would do all of these great things, if you were the one jackass that didn't want to take advantage of it, didn't want to fix all your issues in your yard, code enforcement would tell you, look, we're going to help you, but next week, we're going to cite you for every single one of those violations. This is your opportunity to fix it.
This is like kind of forced.
Well, it's not even forced. It's a law that you have to maintain your shit. We're going to help you do it. You've got nothing to lose. We're going to give you hundreds of dollars of flowers. But if you don't take care of it...
If you don't take these goddamn flowers...
We're going to cite... And that's not even that, right? You don't have to take the flowers. It's all the other stuff, the vehicle in the yard and all the other things. But if you're given that opportunity, the whole purpose was to beautify the neighborhood so the neighborhoods could be proud of it. When you had people that didn't want to take part.
See, but that right there is an American thing that is not input into low-income individuals or communities of color.
That's what I did not. On.
Yeah, like I did not. Right, but I'm saying like that mentality of pride of your neighborhood, pride of your country. Those are things that are synonymous to the average white experience that most people don't resonate with. Like I grew up, I don't have, and this isn't like an anti-patriotism thing. Like when the national anthem was on, there's nothing inside of me that makes me want to put my hand over my heart. I don't think of, like I grew up in a Jehovah's Witness family, so like anything patriotic was like discouraged. So, but that was also very similar to most of the black people that I knew, was that because patriotism and policing is like synonymous, there's no everything that goes along with that is also absent. So it's a super interesting, like, hey, if we make your neighborhood look great, you'll have this sense of pride and you'll stop doing whatever. But people aren't bred with, if you're not bred with that, going back to patterns of thinking, you don't think that way. Right. It's just different.
Right.
So all of that to say, we're an hour and a half in it. I don't know where we went down this rabbit hole, but I'm glad that we did. I'm going to make you talk with me again.
Okay.
And we're going to have to geek out.
We didn't even get into action, reaction,
oh
perception
my God.
times.
Oh, maybe we have time. Look, there's 31 minutes.
I can show you why an officer could have shot somebody in the back and it is 100% justified.
I don't like that.
What if I told you I can prove it?
And okay, so one of the things that Lon and I were talking about is I want data, I want information, I want to be able to prove that I'm right. But when someone actually brings it, I'm like, oh, that's not actually what I want.
I'll do you one better. Let's hit a couple of easy ones. So if an officer shoots 5 rounds, how long does that take?
3 seconds, 4, I don't know. Longer? Shorter? Really?
What if I told you the average officer pulls the trigger 1 time every quarter second?
So is that why this last shooting, where you're just like 7 shots and you're like, I don't know, it's hard to know.
I have a drill and I'll send you the video. I have a target that's at 7 yards. It turns, that's the visual stimulus.
What's 7 yards?
7 yards away. So
like
it's
to the
21.
Wall?
Yeah, 21 feet, about roughly. So I shoot 10 rounds, all center mass hits in 2 seconds.
Okay.
10 rounds. That's 5 rounds on average a second.
Yeah, thank you. I don't like that math.
It's not a matter of math.
What'd you say?
You want a box?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not math. I will show you the video. It's not made up. I'm telling you, the average officer runs a trigger every 0.25. I've got people I've tested 1.5 to 1.7. I'm sorry, 0.15 to 0.17, or under 2. So here's the math. 0 on my clock is the first round. 0.2 seconds later is the second round. 0.4 seconds is the third round. 0.6, 0.8, 1 second.
I don't like that. That's literally insane.
You don't have to like it. That's the reality of human performance. It's not a like or not like. You either accept the fact that that is a performance envelope that we are capable of.
Yeah, I was just saying I don't like this information.
Well,
That's
true. And even if I go 0.25,
6
0
in 1 second.
0, right? Let's go 0.25 because there's actually a ton of research that in low stress events, 0.25 is really easy. I could teach you to do 0.25 in about an hour and a half. So 0 is my first round, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1 second, 5 rounds.
That's insane.
It's not insane. It's a window of performance.
So
and I can do it over and over and over with no special guns, no trick anything, just a standard Glock all day long.
So, okay, well, you've also been doing this job for like a hot minute. So what about like the average officer? Is it still the same?
It's about 0.25. I run about 0.2. I got guys that are much faster than I am. 0.17. Routinely, he could run 0.17. That's a whole nother math. So hold on. What if I tell you that if I initiate the motor program, I see the stimulus, the schema of somebody drawing a weapon, and my brain says, I am at risk, I need to fire at this person until they're no longer a threat. And I do that. I initiate that program, and I start to do what I need to do. There's a point in time in that loop, you cannot stop it. You will not stop the action. There's a point in time in that loop. Physically, it can't be done. If I take this straw and I take a little BB and I run the BB down the straw that says start shooting, and then I take another one that says stop shooting, until that first BB makes it out, the second BB's not hitting the signal. So the first one has to be carried out. It has to be completed. There's a point in time there's no way to stop it. So if the stimulus hits, the person is drawing that gun, that positions that we talked about before. I'm going to draw my gun and I'm going to fire 1 round. I can literally have a change in the environment that I consciously will start to, but I can't stop it.
So like, okay.
You're going to come Friday, and I'm
fucking brain.
literally. You're going to come Friday, and I'm going to put you through this event. It's called Stop Time. I'm going to give you a visual signal to stop shooting, and I'm going to tell you right now, even after this huge visual signal, it's easy to see, you're going to continue to shoot from anywhere to 1 to 4 rounds.
So essentially what we want as a society are robots.
But it's not going to happen.
But right,
that's
what we're saying.
Why do you do a follow distance in your vehicle? What's
a what?
Your following distance. How far back are you supposed to be from a vehicle ahead of you?
2 Mississippis.
Why?
To not hit them.
Why? Why would you hit them?
Because you don't know. But you don't know what they're going to do.
You have to do what? You have to see that you have a need.
Oh, and
you have
reaction.
To recognize it.
So my reaction time.
You have to react and initiate the motor program, which is to step on the brake, and then you have to carry it out, the actual movement time. In general, it's about 1.5 to 2 seconds. Most gunfights are over and under that. We know there's limits to human performance. There's limits to human performance. We know there's limits to human performance. We're not robots. Okay, let's keep going. Visually, our waitress.
So is this why the law is generally on the side of the police officer, because it's knowing that amount of information?
You have a reasonable person standard, but you also have a reasonable officer standard when it comes to arrests. But in general, if you tell me that a law is on the side of the officer, explain what you mean by that. Give me an example of what you mean.
So if an officer I'm trying to think of like...
If I knowingly violate somebody's rights, I'm held accountable. 42 U.S.C. 1983.
Not that. So like if I shoot someone, right? Like, but I'm upholding the law.
Take that out of it. Do you as a person have a reasonable belief that the behavior they were engaged in is threatening to you or another person? Remember my description earlier of somebody dropping their head and their chest down and going to their waistband? Right?
Yeah.
Do I have to wait till the gun is here to shoot? No, because it's too late.
But that's what people want.
It's too late.
Right, but okay, so if that's what people want, and there's payouts, and there's whatever, that's telling me that it can be avoided. So sure, that's what we're seeing right now, is that it can't be.
Right.
But when you pay out, and when you allow I don't know. I guess this just doesn't make any sense to me.
Have you ever done something, been engaged in a behavior, and out of the corner of your eye, you see something and you think it's a threat, a spider, a snake, and you jump, and you react to it, and then you're like, oh, it's not a spider?
Yeah.
We all do it.
Yeah.
But you still jumped.
Right.
Why? Because there's a protective mechanism in your brain going, you as a human being need to stay alive. So if I have somebody that has been told to me this person's armed, they engage in a fact pattern, a schema of somebody drawing a gun from their waistband. If I wait to visually confirm that there's a gun, they will fire 1 to 2 rounds at me before I can even get a shot off.
So what happens if I shoot them and this scenario. Schema's there. I don't wait for them to draw and I shoot them. The law is on my side.
Correct.
Right.
But it's also on your side as a civilian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Somebody put you in a situation. I've testified. I told you I testified for a civilian. He was a Vietnam veteran, older gentleman.
Oh, yes, you did tell me.
And subject was completely unarmed. He knew this other subject was unarmed, but the guy was much younger than he was and 80 pounds heavier than he was. Guy was known in the neighborhood as being a knockout king. So he would just walk up to people, sucker punch them, knock them out, and take their shit. That's all known to this older gentleman, right? Older guy, black guy, lower socioeconomic area. They're in an apartment together. This kid, now he's not a kid, he was a thug, told this old guy that I'm gonna knock you out, I'm gonna take your gun, I'm gonna shoot you, and he believed him. So, kid wouldn't let him leave. Old guy drew his pistol, shot him, walked out of the apartment. Completely justified. This guy's unarmed, but completely justified. Is it reasonable for this old guy to believe that this guy could have carried out the action that he threatened to, which was to punch him, knock him out, take his stuff, and shoot him? Yes, and he believed every word of it. And he was completely justified. And I testified for that guy. Actually, I wrote a report, and he didn't have to go to court. So he didn't testify. My report cleared him.
So, help me understand then how there have been some shootings that I've shown officers where they're like,
But again, the video was not from the perspective of the officer at the time. So don't get me wrong. I've seen some shootings that I'm going,
where it's just like, fuck.
So I do expert witness testimony, right? I get called into court, and sometimes attorneys want me, and sometimes they don't. I
can see that. I can see it. I'd be like, let's avoid Lon.
Yeah, you know.
I don't want this fucking guy.
Here's the report. Here's the video. What do you think about my client? I think your client's probably going to do time because in no way, shape, or form are they going to be justified in what they did. Now, I've had a lot of other cases that I've been involved with, but absolutely, my testimony was for the officer. So, I've gone, I've worked both sides of the house. In general, defense attorneys won't hire me if I don't help the case, right? They don't want anything to do with me. And prosecution will usually find their own witness or whatever else through the agency. They rarely go outside. But anyway, the reality is I've seen video that from one angle, I've got one. I'll send you 2 videos. I'll send them to you. Are these ones I can...
My heart, I can't. Oh, fuck.
You
Some
look
of these
at the first
shoots
one,
make me like...
You look at the first one, and it looks like they're shooting this young black kid as he's walking away from them. And you're like, oh my God, they just executed him. And when I show you the other video, you see him literally do this, and then the shooting starts.
She just held up a gun to me, a fake gun.
Yeah, I did the whole hands finger gun. It was a finger gun.
Yeah, he pointed his gun at me.
I pointed my finger.
Right in my face.
I pointed my finger.
That's all Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels, right? No, but I've got the video. There's same shooting, 2 different angles. One of them, and I've used that video in citizens academies for a long time. I'll show the first one. How many of y'all think it was not justified? And the majority of the class will raise their hand. Not justified. Absolutely not. And I play the second video. How many of y'all think it was justified? And now the whole class is raising their hand. It's clear cut, right? And I said, oh yeah, so y'all, when you saw the first video, y'all was were willing to hang this officer.
Yeah.
You see the second one, you're absolutely convinced that he should have, the officer did the right thing. He should have shot him. Oh, yeah. And then I said, what if I tell you that what was in his hand actually was a brush and not a gun? And then they all start looking at each other.
Fuck, right.
And I play it again, and it's a brush. He engaged in the physical activity of it being a firearm, and the officers believed him.
I got caught up in a simulation like that, where it's like you go through it one time and you fail, and then you go through it again, and so you shoot, and then he goes, and then they replay it back, and then they're like, they don't have anything in their hand. It's like, you motherfuckers, you fucking got me.
They didn't get you. Your limitations as a human being got you.
Okay, first of all, that was rude. That was. He's holding up the fucking sign next to my face showing the vision's limited.
You only can see so much. I'll do you one better. How do we teach officers to shoot? What are you supposed to look at? Your front sight. If my target over there, and I have to now visually focus on my front sight, that's no longer in focus. That down there, that person can significantly change body position, and because my attention is now on my front sight, I may never see it. They could drop the gun completely, which is shown on the camera over here and all of the witnesses off to the side, but because I'm visually focusing on my front sight, I won't even be able to see it. My camera shows the guy was unarmed. The witnesses showed the guy was unarmed.
What do you think about dark figures correlating with dark figures for target practice?
In silhouettes.
Right.
Yeah.
So thinking of dark
I don't like
complexion
silhouettes in general. I use a light gray.
So think about how
or a beige.
I've been wondering. This was just kind of like a random thought that came into my head.
Are we programming people to shoot black people? Is that because I've heard the argument actually?
Oh, not that. Not that.
I think it's a good argument. I'd love to talk about that.
I feel like that's a completely different motivation behind my question versus knowing how the brain assumes. Is that one of those things where if you have practiced with a certain shade, that your brain just gets used to associating and assuming information based off of your experience at the range or whatever, versus, this doesn't feel like too far of a reach, because like I said, the motivation is not that we're training people to kill black people, it's that saying, it's just, it's a coincidence, dark skin, dark outline of a
Well, what
thing.
you're saying is it a conditioned response?
Yes, that's what I'm wondering.
Is
there
utilization?
Some of that?
You know what? You'd have to do research on that. I didn't use a lot of dark silhouettes. I used beige or gray, so beige on white or gray on white. You have to do some type of contrast.
I wonder. So something that popped into my head, going like, I wonder how much of this is pattern programming versus intentional bias, and just sort of playing that devil's advocate.
If you want to talk about bias really quick, look at Roland Fryer work or some of the other folks. Roland Fryer is a Harvard graduate who's a economic professor and researcher. He actually did a huge study on law enforcement use of force, and his premise was that decisions to use force, specifically decisions to use firearms, there was a racial bias. So he went into it with his own bias.
See, I'm not even thinking at it from that perspective.
But what he actually established is that cops don't shoot based on color. His research actually showed that. What he did show, though, is black cops actually typically would shoot black folks more quickly than white officers. So
because racism it's not just exclusive to within the white community, it's within our own community, where you look at people as a certain way
it's a bias.
Yep.
But a bias, when we use the term bias, we have to remember that bias in and of itself is not negative. Bias is a reaning strategy. It can have a negative, quote unquote, negative tone to it, but it's a reasoning strategy. So, we both
reasoning strategy.
Yeah, cognitive bias. So,
there's some level of threat.
It could be a threat, but it can be other things as well. We have a bias to all kinds of stuff. I don't like shellfish, or I don't like snails. I have a bias.
But that's still detecting a threat to your body.
Or taste. I don't like it. Or I have a preference for certain things. We have a lot of bias. But if you think about it from the perspective of in Fryer's work, he showed that actually we're not shooting folks. Cops aren't shooting folks based on the color of their skin. So when he did his press release, I got a copy of his interview. He was shocked at his own findings, and it almost looked like he was disappointed that it didn't show that there was this huge racial bias in the decision to use deadly force. So kind of excited, and there's a lot of research that shows that.
I would love to geek out on this shit. I just think it's so fascinating to just understand how the brain just
rolling fryer.
The brain just does stuff. Like it's just like it's its own. So then I was wondering, like, this is probably a conversation for you and I. Sorry, podcasters, you have to listen, and I'll wrap it up after this.
You got 11 minutes.
I have 11 minutes to wrap it up. I told him, I'm like, we are not going longer than 2 hours. But like, so the brain, you know what? I'm going to save that for you and I. We're going to wrap this up, guys. Okay. So thank you so much for letting me ask you all of the questions and talk about all this stuff. On Friday, I brought him a karambit. He's one of those, you know, there's either tomato or tomatoes. Right. He's a karambit. I'm a karambit. I brought him an auto karambit.
And I'm happy about it.
Our waitress is probably...
Yeah, we got 2 knives on the table.
She's avoiding.
We're talking about guns. She hasn't come back in like an hour.
We're talking about like race. But thank you so much. You guys, I promise you, you're going to hear a lot about Virtra. I'm not paid by them. I'm not involved. I'm not associated with Virtra. I just believe in it. And honestly, if you've never fucking trained, contact me. We'll figure out a way to get you through the simulator. It is vital to your career as a law enforcement officer to put yourself through effectual stress inoculation, and not just to put yourself through stress training, but to also have like a game plan for how to do things different. That's huge. Okay, Lon, say thank you to everyone. Say goodbye. Say nice to meet everyone.
Thank you all for listening to me babble for an hour and 50 minutes. You know, I have a knack for doing that. But you know what? I hope that it's something that we discussed resonated with you. I hope that, you know, you take 1 or 2 nuggets away. If you want to argue about a point, you can contact me at Virtra, Lbartel at Virtra.com. If you want to call a bullshit flag on something, please do. If you want to agree with me, you can do that too. I always like a good debate. Don't make it personal. If you attack me personally, it's an ad hominem argument, and basically what you've told me is you don't really have an argument. Let's talk about the points.
I feel like this has happened 1 or 2 times. Should we have like the little like woo with like the I need like a DJ. What are those like table? I need a DJ table. I don't know how it works. Special thank you, Lon Bartel. You are, man, we learned a lot. I learned a ton for sure. I'm excited about some dialogue, what this is gonna kind of stir up. So head over to Virtra, check them out. These are simulators that you can bring to your departments. If you're in the state of Arizona, like we talked about, there's a freaking bill that you can get the training simulator for free. Super rad, okay? So check out Virtra on social media, on the internets, do all the things. Don't forget to tune in September 28th. We want that. We want our cops trained. So we're doing the virtual BJJ. Get up in it. For updates, I would say go to the website, but you know I don't post it there. Man, I am learning all of the website things. So you can find some information there, but hopefully you're following us on social media because that's where it's happening. All the funny memes are taking place on Instagram, okay? All right, you guys, have a great evening. Oh, don't forget about our sponsor, Ravencrest Tactical, woot, woot, woot. Why don't I have a knife right here to show you? That would be, oh my God, I'm just gonna go do that. Ravencrest Tactical. This is my favorite carry. It's super light. Obviously, it matches me. You don't have to be as extra. But head on over to the website, ravencresttactical.com. You can use promo code KNIFEGIRL20. That'll get you 20% off. And I get dollars, so, you know.
Subscribe to the channel below, and we will see you soon.